Main focus? I don't know. That's a good question. I'm in a shadow. I know that. I sure hope I'm in focus. Alright, I hope I'm in focus. I am in Holland, Michigan. We are going to do a sit down and sew. Sit and sew, that's what you call it. So I'm so excited about this. And I just get to spend the afternoon. Let's spend the afternoon together sewing. Hey everyone, I am Sarah. We are going over one of my favorite smocking patterns. Normally I just make up my smocking like as I'm going. Man, I hope I'm in focus. But this is one of my favorite smocking patterns. I've done this once before on a bishop a long time ago when I was still learning how to do bishops. But I am going to revisit her. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I'm going to walk you through how I at least tackle this. This has, you know, trellis and up and down. It's got bullions. It's got a couple things that are like, you know, I don't know why I say complicated, but I could see it be complicated. Yeah, complicated. Let's just say complicated. Tricky. There's some tricks to this, and I'm going to walk you through this process. I start it backwards. I'm not sure if everyone does this, but I know this is how I do it. I am largely self-taught, and this is definitely one of my ways. I hope this camera's not going to fall over. I've got you propped up. It is all sorts of just make it work here in the field of the tulips, but I am not complaining. I am so excited. The weather is so pretty. The tulips are gorgeous. Don't mind my eye. That's a whole thing. We can get into it as we get going. So I've got a braid that goes over most of the colors in here. So the braid has the blue and the green in it. The green is really special. I have not used this green before, and it just changes the entire look of the motif. So I'm excited about that. Now the pinks I'm using floche, whereas the colors are referring to floss. So there's only so many colors. There's like just under 100 colors of floche, whereas there's a bajillion colors of floss. And so the pinks are close enough. The yellow is close enough. It gets you there, but the green really sets the tone for this thing. So I have the full-on colors because I just do so much hand work. Why not? It just makes more sense. We're going to start with the blue, and I'm just going to do the base of the smocking first. So what I am going to start, and like I said, I'm largely self-taught, so I don't know if this is like the way you're supposed to do it, like what other people do it, or I don't know, but this is the way I do it, and it takes a lot of the thinking out, which is great. Especially after you've had children and you can no longer think. Anybody else? So I'm going to use, I think I'm going to go with 2 strands of floche. I think I'm going to, yeah. Am I? 1 strand, 2 strand, life decisions. Maybe 1 strand. Do I want to do 2? I think I'm going to do 1 strand. I'm going to do 1 strand. The road is filled with squirrels who cannot make up their mind. So, 1 strand of floche. I hope the sound is okay too. I tested out these microphones before I left home, and there's no turning back at this point. So, I hope all is being recorded well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the center front of my garment, and that's where I'm going to start the trellis. So I'm going to go from the center front of my garment, start the bottom of that trellis, the bottom stitch, and then go over, and then go all the way up, counting however many. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 groups, if that makes sense, like 7 little, the bottoms going up. And then we'll come down 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll come down 4. Okay, we'll go back up 4 and then come down 4. Right? So the bottom, like the main one, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 to get you up to the middle thing, and then we go down 4, up 4, another joiner thing, and then we go down 4. Okay, that's how I start this trellis, and that gives me the base, so I don't have to think about counting whatever to get me the only thing that I think about counting is where to place this bottom. So you can see they've got it on the 8th row, but that's the 8th whole space. So if you've done half spaces, you'll count 16 down. Does that make sense? Because, you know, half to 16 is 8, so there you go. And then that's where you'll place the first stitch and work your way up, and then I just work my way back to fill in. To begin, I tie on by taking my needle through 2 pleats, and then again, which creates a loop. And I wrap my needle around that loop twice and pull through, which ties my thread onto the back of my bishop. So from there, I send my needle to the right side of my bishop in that like center-ish pleat. I am estimating the center front here, but you are more than welcome to count your pleats if you'd like. So I go over once, and that's the bottom stitch. And whenever doing smocking stitches, it's good to keep your needle parallel with your pleating threads. This will ensure that your stitches look nice and orderly. And from there, I go over one more stitch. And now we're going to move up 1/2 space and make another little bottom trellis. So 1 stitch and then another stitch, which is below that first one. That's the bottom stitch, and finally 1 stitch above for a total of 3 stitches, with again that middle stitch is on the bottom. Just rinse and repeat that pattern of 3 stitches with the middle stitch on the bottom. I want to do the top little neck thing, so that will be on this orange, this first orange thread, that first orange row. And then it needs to skip a full, so I'm going to skip this one, and then it should start on this next one? No, halfway down. This should start on this orange row. So that's where the top of my trellis should start. And then I just need a difference of 2, because the big trellis has 6 going down and the small trellises have 4. So I'm just gonna go, so those are my extra, so right here, those are my extra 2. And then so my bottom, my small trellis, the bottom of that should be on the blue thread. Does that make sense? It does in my mind. Scary how my mind works. Oh. It works is a generous term, I feel like. Alright. So we're going to go like that. So this will be the bottom of the next trellis. And I messed up on counting my threads when I was at home pleating this sucker up. And now I am discovering, in a field of tulips, that my numbers are going to be a little bit off from the pattern, but that's okay. It's still going to work out all right. All is good. I ended up with 8 little clusters going up, 1 cluster in the middle that's going to serve as like the transition. And so now I'm going to come down 6 little clusters, since there's a difference of 2 in the smocking plate pattern. Like I said, it's not 1 for 1, but I'm just going to figure out how to get around my mistake in a beautiful field of tulips. It is all good. We are soldiering on, sewing on. I've got the center front trellis structure done. I've got my small trellis where that should end. And so now I need to work the stitches back to the far left of my bishop. If you're left-handed, then do the far right of your bishop, I think. I'm not positive, but anyway, I am right-handed. I smock from left to right, so I'm going to go back to the left-hand side of my bishop. Hope that is making sense. So now we're going to anchor the top of the pattern, again, eliminating as much thinking as we can from this whole situation. I begin at the bottom trellis in this row, and I go up to repeat those same 3 stitches, 1 over. The middle one is below the other 2, and then that final 3rd stitch for, 3 stitches. Y'all have seen this. Now here is where the pattern changes. And I kind of actually lost sight of this. I guess the flowers are just so pretty. I don't know. It's fine. So you can see me taking out these stitches so I can correct things.
The pattern is still 3 stitches, but now the middle stitch is going to be on top of the other stitches. So the top row, the middle stitch is below the other 2 stitches, and on the bottom row, the middle stitch is on top of the other 2 stitches. And just continue this pattern until you get to the end of the bishop.
Alright, so some people are going to ask about how many pleats. Well, first of all, so the last piece of structure is to get the rest of the trellis in there, and that way you know we've got the top, and then we'll have the bottom, and then it's just a matter of filling in between the top and the bottom. Now, we already went over when we went on the top that you had to alternate the little 3 stitches. You get to alternate the middle, like whether the middle of the 3 stitches was above or below. But when we're doing the bottom of the trellis, all of the middle stitch they're all gonna be on the bottom, okay? Because when we fill it in, we're filling in the top part of that. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna go back and start at the bottom of this trellis. This is my small trellis. These are all gonna be small trellis, so they're all gonna go, what is it? From the center, like the introduction point, it's all gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down. So I'm at the bottom, so I'm gonna come back up those 6-ish marks. That makes sense. So again, the middle piece is gonna be on the bottom, and then I go over another stitch, and then come up to, I'm really just gonna come up to wherever it meets, you know, because I've got my top row there. And then, so I'm not gonna have to count on the way up, because it's just gonna come to wherever it meets. And then I need to count on the way down, and just make sure I'm level on what happens to be the blue line, that blue thread for me. My pleater is like a hot mess of all different color threads right now. It just happens to work out because right now I can just focus on getting down to the blue thread and not have to think as much, which is excellent. Excellent, not having to think as much. But anyway, so some people are going to ask, like, how many pleats, if I counted my pleats. And I know this is controversial, but no, I don't count my pleats. I did a video on this a while ago, going over just like, no, I don't. And life goes on. I don't let you. Okay, what am I trying to say? If you want to count your pleats, go ahead and do so. I don't. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, I don't lose any sleep over it. So for me, I just think it's pretty regardless, and I don't stress about it. I mean, things may change down the road, but at this point, I don't have any desire to count 200 pleats. And the other side of that is that I feel like I'm highly likely to mess up when I'm counting. So if I mess up and it's, you know, I miscount by whatever, well then the point of counting kind of goes down the drain, right? You've got to be precise when you're counting for it to make any sense in counting, which I don't have that much faith in myself, so I don't count. Yeah, so now we're just building the bottom of this. Going down this. This is so peaceful. You guys have a chance to come up. I am so grateful that I had this chance. If you're in the thick of motherhood, I see you, I feel you, I've been there. I am just newly on the other side of it. Like, I remember the days. I remember them. And I am so grateful that we now have some support between school and both of us are now doing e-commerce, so our schedule you know, my husband's able to do the kiddos more because he's not actually having to, even though he's been self-employed for a while, he's not actually having to go, he's doing an e-commerce thing. So he doesn't actually have to go and do his work in person. Does that make sense? So he's able to pick up the kids if they're sick from school or things of that nature. We're able to juggle together instead of it just being all on me. So between all of those factors, and school, of course, I mentioned school. Yes, I mentioned school because school is massive. I'm able to do these sort of things, and and the third thing is that I'm no longer nursing. I'm no longer, I don't have itty bitty babies. I'm on the other side of motherhood. That's what I mean. They're no longer attached to me all the time. Demanding to be nurse napped or to be carried or to be in the carrier or to. Those days are behind us, and I'm grateful for those days, but I'm also really grateful that I'm able to do things like this. This is just so many things have come together for me to be able to go off and do stuff like this, and I am just so grateful. I'm grateful for y'all, for your support. I'm just happy, and I'm grateful and enjoying life, and I hope that everybody has these feelings in these moments and you're able to do stuff like this in your life. Anyhow, we're going to go back up the trellis.
Continuing to go to the other side of the bishop, we're going to keep repeating that bottom of the trellis until we reach our top row. That same 3-stitch pattern with the middle stitch on the bottom. Oh, and this is a good trick. If your brain turns off on you and you end up with your needle on the wrong side of your stitches, just slide your needle underneath that last stitch and voila, you are good to go. There's no need to unthread your needle and do the whole thing. Just slide her underneath it and go on your merry little way. So just continue this pattern until you get to the end of your bishop. So here's how the cookie is crumbling at the end of my bishop. Again, I do not count my pleats and the world is gonna keep on turning just fine. So after reaching that side, now I went back to the center front of my bishop, stitched the bottom of these trellis, I don't know, working them to the other side of the bishop. To do this, I complete 1 stitch to make that center front trellis have 3 stitches, and then I continue that 3-stitch pattern with the middle stitch placed below the other 2 stitches.
What's your making? Bishop, a small bishop. This thing.
Oh,
Thank you.
beautiful. Oh, that smells lovely.
Yeah, it's called smocking. There's all these little tiny pleats.
Yes.
And then the smocking is the stitches that keep them. There's a machine that puts the pleats in. You roll it through a machine and it pleats it up for you. And then the smocking actually is the stuff that connects the pleats together and keeps them.
Oh my gosh. That one embroidery type.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Very beautiful.
Thank you.
And after a while, I reach the other side, and now the bottom of the trellises were in place.
I don't know why I clap. I do that all the time when I start. Action. Take 2. So we are no longer at the tulips. We are in the mountains. Welcome to my home. This is the mountains. Okay, when I say my home, I wasn't raised here, but this is home for us. The mountains have graciously adopted us. I feel at home here. We feel at home here. My husband, Charlie's off to the side, which is what I'm looking at. But anyway, so we are on our deer date, and I thought it would be a good chance just to finish her up. I had to leave the tulips, had to come back home. But like I said, this is my home,
I'm glad.
Had to come back here. We can do. Anyway, it's so peaceful, and it's I guess the thing is to get outside. And I was in Atlanta not too long ago, and I just went into a park and I just did my smocking thing, and it was all good. And get outside, whatever makes you happy, you do it. You could make a friend, you could just see something really cool, go ahead and do it. So we're gonna finish this up.
Good.
Hold on. I feel like I have a spider on my neck.
This is the highest peak.
All right, so we are gonna finish her up in the Great Smoky Mountains. Do y'all hear that breeze? It is so peaceful. So what we're gonna do first is go to that cable stitch. The cable stitch is half a space down from where your bias band is. Yeah, half a whole space, half a space. You're going to find that pleating thread and you're going to smock the cable stitch along there. So the idea of the cable stitch is that you want to have your stitches together without any gaps. If you have a gap, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it does look a little bit nicer without a gap. So you're just going to go below a stitch and then above a stitch, below a stitch, and then above a stitch. Again, wanting to space them so that you don't have any gaps. And another thing with whenever you're doing smocking is that you want to pull just enough. If you pull too tight, it sort of squashes your pleats and they just don't look as like luscious and plump and all of the niceness. And then if you don't pull enough, then you don't have like the structural integrity and it also just doesn't look as neat. So you want to pull just until like the thread starts to touch your pleats and then you just back off. So once you're finished with the cable stitch, now you're going to do the stitch underneath. And the stitch underneath kind of combines like, it kind of combines like a trellis with some cables. So where do you start this?
Tell me.
All right, so where do you start this? Okay, so if you look at where the cable is, you've got two cables that are going to touch and then you've got the other two that are going to be further away. So wherever your cable was when you started like the first row of cables, if you have one that's the upper, then you're going to have a lower. If you have one that's the lower, now you're going to have an upper because you either want them to be touching or you want them to be away from each other. Does that make sense? So start it there and then from there pick up the pattern. And if you look at the pattern is you've got 3 cables on the upper and then you've got 2 below and then you do like 1 trellis. So how that looks in my case is I'm at the point where I'm going to do 1 trellis below. I'm going to go over a stitch and then I'm going to pick up that pattern which is 3 cables above and 2 below. So I got 1 stitch over, 1 stitch under, another stitch upper, another stitch under, and another stitch upper, and then I'm back to my pattern. And you're just going to do that for the second row.
Or it's called the right down there. It's under inside here, you know, the inner when you speak. Oh, hey, Tim. Yeah, right.
You probably need to go check on Bill. Well, he has to come tumbling down.
Probably come down pretty quick.
Well, that's pretty much why I didn't go. You remember when the house in Washington and all around that part of the way?
Oh, that was a fun climate.
That was when Tim and Wendy Victoria and us walked up on the bridge.
That was a cool hike.
Oh, there he is.
Where you see him? Oh yeah, always get up there.
He's still going hard. Yeah, grumbling, that's probably.
What's that? Other fun contract.
And it's not real steady up there as a lady. That's not good.
said, no, my cousin, my second cousin. Cousin's working neighbor twice, so better tissues. Best friends. Well, talking about his brother. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Do that one. Kyle's conversation evolved into,
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe response. He did too hard. He said, you did too hard. I don't know what he said. He sent me some poop emoji with something. And I was like, he's like, you want to? I was like, I don't know. And then he was like, why not? I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, well, look at this. There's a picture of me and you here.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, why not? And he said, you know why not? So, I can't believe it. That's it.
Yeah. Again,
That's just the one.
that was too much.
Okay, why would you fresh water? Bigger than your seas. This is not what it is. It's close to this 8 hours.
Yeah, I saw it.
It's amazing. I'm not playing the live episode, it's just a screenshot of the South Park cats. Screenshot.
Yes. I think I could make about 100 gallons on some of that. Yeah, Brandon. That's what we were on. Brandon.
Right. That girl doesn't.
Yeah, and the minute this man again, to watch the door, she's just on the outside. It's on top of the beach restaurant. Well, yeah, is she okay? Yeah, I don't want to get her. She's funny. Seems like we're 7 8 or something. Now it's
The funny thing is, I took over. So I find it.
I mentioned that to film it. I had babies on the nose of I wish she had.
So 20,000.
That's all size. Maybe she doesn't know. Always can't be a picture of the other. I agree with you on that. I know this. I always agree with the back and both.
Yeah, we can. One is asking, she's saying there should be a first year, but that was Genera. But yeah, it's very grateful. The gold medal. Yeah, it is.
That's the right of horse. You're allergic to horses? They took the test, I mean, child's birth, like, we didn't do the test. Horse, bowl, project to everyone.
I looked up online.
The girls are in
2280.
they do the test.
I don't think you had a patch on your foot.
Oh,
You're touching the dog today.
Have y'all been driving to the Blue Ridge? Have y'all been driving to the Blue Ridge?
I'm sure, I think so.
So you can get through the clouds on that. Like it'll get like 5,000-6,000 feet over.
Really?
Like our son's 4 and he calls it like the cloud sphere. We just drive through the clouds.
It's called Blue Ridge?
The Blue Ridge
Blue Ridge
Parkway.
Parkway, yeah.
It's it was like a project. What, Roosevelt did it?
It was one of those like Depression era projects, like get out of,
Goes
like get to
from, like,
work. You know.
Here to Virginia.
Yeah, it's on the ridge.
It's
basically.
there's like a ton of car commercials that were filmed up there and stuff. Like it's
It's like this kind of view, but you're just driving.
you're just driving through it.
Yeah.
Like
I like that.
yeah.
There's so much.
And there's like trails and stuff throughout there. There's waterfalls. There's a whole bunch of things.
Overlooks every five minutes.
There's a ton of overlooks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Picnic places, hiking trails, like so many cool things. Yeah. Sorry, I kept hearing about you in the clouds, and I kept thinking Henry in the Cloud Road.
Driving in the clouds.
Driving in the clouds.
Check that out.
Yeah.
Horsey.
Blue Ridge Parkway. Yeah.
I'm just calling. Coming up there.
Go.
Well, what's the big morning? Unless it fell off.
Are you guys gonna get that? Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too. Alright, here we go. Alright, so when we do a bullion, let's start with just learning how to do a bullion stitch. I'm going to take the medium pink. I've got a whole flourish braid of it, but that's alright. You've got the, if you bought the braid, that's fine. It's the same pink. I just happen to go through flourish like no one's business because I really like it. So I'm going to tie a knot. Alternatively, you could have like sewn in a knot onto the back side of the pleats. I also do that method. I actually showed that method earlier in the video. So I go back and forth, depending on which way, if I want to get wild and crazy. Mix things up. You just don't know which way I'm going to zing or zag. I like to cut off, if you got to do the little, lick it number to get your thread threaded, no judging, because that's just what I did. But I do trim her off because, especially with bullions, you don't want that little bit of like saliva causing tension as you're going through the bullion. So we're going to start with just learning how to do a bullion stitch, and that is going to be in this middle spot for the pattern. So you can see I'm at the largest peak, and just follow the the diagram, the pattern, but I'm at the largest. It's going to be a rose here. There's going to be that little lazy yellow flower, and then there's going to be, not lazy, I meant to say daisy. Daisy yellow flower, and then there's going to be a little rosebud right here. So let's learn how to do a bullion stitch with the rosebud, since that's the simplest thing. And I like to start my rosebuds with the smallest bit, okay, the shortest bit. So I'm going to come up where I want the shortest bit, the top of it to be, and I'm kind of like on the inside of that pleat. Since I want my rosebud to be centered, I've got 2 pleats on the outside, I got 2 on the inside, so I want it to be like in that center thing. I'm going to come in the center of it, and I'm just going to take a very, very small bite. Do not get like, don't take a big bite. Just, I'm warning you, just don't go. So now we've got it. So we're gonna do our wraps, and we've come up pretty close, not in the same hole, but pretty close to that initial spot. So you're just gonna do a couple wraps. Do not get overzealous with these wraps at this stage right here. Sometimes I recommend doing more wraps than fewer, but this is a case where I recommend doing fewer reps than more. So I'm trying to fill in that space that I've left, they will squish down a little bit, and not everything always divides out evenly. So between all of that, you want to wrap these very like on the loose side of tight, you know, so you can see my fingers can wiggle these around, and you don't want to get into a situation where you're like having to tug and pull. It should, you just put your thumb, forefinger, it should just slide right through like that, like butter. And then you got yourself a little bullion. So from here, try not to touch it too much, to take that tail and get it so it's facing the direction that it needs to pull, all right? So we've got it in this direction. All my loops looking good. I'm gonna put my thumb over top of the bullion and just give it a gentle little tug. And there we are with a bullion stitch. And we can send our needle right back down, like at the bottom of that rosebud. Now, from here, there are two different methods on how to do the little wraparound. I personally really like to aim for the wraparound. I think it looks really darling as a rosebud. The first method, I'll show you the easier one first, and then I will show you the more advanced one. So the first method is to go on the inside of that pleat, all right? You see I'm like on the inside as opposed to like, I guess over here would be the outside. Are we splitting hairs? Yeah, a little bit like splitting, I guess you could say threads. But it does add up to make a difference in the curvature and how things just come together, and, you know, devil's in the details. So on the inside of that pleat, this is the easier of the two methods, and then go down at the bottom of this bullion, and you're gonna come up just on the inside of that stitch, all right? And from here, once again, we're going to do our wraps. This time, it's better to have an extra wrap or two than not enough, for sure. And with any time you do bullions, you want to make sure that this first wrap down here is, you don't have a like extra, you don't have slack there, okay? So you just want to have it be as flush. Again, you want to keep these things, you know, what's the word? Not crazy tight. Oh, I'm not thinking about how many wraps I have. That looks about right. All right, so not crazy taut on the amount of, on the tension here. Again, forefinger and thumb. We're gonna slide this out. It slides right through like butter. And then our next step is to get that tail in the direction, you know, right now it would not pull nicely. If I were to pull on that, that would be a hot mess in a hurry. So don't do that, because we have ourselves a pretty bullion, especially with this flourish. Flourish, in my opinion, makes the prettiest bullions. So we just get that tail going how we want it, going like in the direction that it should be going. Thumb over top, give it a gentle pull, and you can see it is pulling gently down into place. And we're going to continue that until it's all the way into place. And we have ourselves a little bit of a wraparound. Is this my favorite method? No. But is it the easier of the two methods? Yes. And does it get the job done? Absolutely. So there's a little rosebud. Isn't she sweet? On the back, let's do the other method just to remind y'all. You can go through. This is how I like just about always tie off. Go through twice, create a loop, go through the loop twice, pull her tight, and trim her off. So let me get this to the place where we can show the other route. So on this side, I'm going to have my rosebud, you know, angled the other direction. So this here will be my small. So again, just take a little bite. Yeah. Right, so now we're at the spot of doing, we're at the step of doing the other petal. And this is the little bit more of an advanced thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of a gap. You can see I'm going to come up on this pleat on the inside of the pleat where my rosebud is, like where the first petal is. We're going to still go on the bottom, but this time we're going to come up on the other pleat. I know, advanced. This makes you nervous, by all means, just do the first method, but this is a little bit of advanced because you still don't want the slack between where this is coming out of the fabric and where it's going to land onto your needle. So you want it to be some flavor of like that, all right? What you don't want is like to have this gap and have it like that. You see that gap right there? That bit of space? That's going to leave you with a hot mess in a hurry. It's not going to be quite a hot mess in a hurry, but it's not going to be as polished as not having a gap. You're just going to have like a little bit of a hairdo on the top of your petal. Something like that. You see how pretty these wraps are? Gosh, man. For the win. Make sure we have our tension that's a little bit on the loose side. Hold it. Comes right through like butter. Get our tail in the right direction. Bring this down and just pulling gently. And this, to continue the curve around, this is the same, I forgot to mention this earlier, it's the same water method you want to use. You just want to bring the tail around, right? So like, we're having this curvature. You did all this trouble, don't put your needle and like have it straight and put it here. Like put the needle so that place the thread so that it maintains the curvature. How pretty is that? There's just a little bit of like if you compare the two methods, this one looks just fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and but it just looks a little bit more elevated, in my opinion. So now then, I have done the rose in a number of different color motifs, trying out this thing. There, I actually started with the lightest pink on the middle. Not a huge fan of that one. There's the darker pink. I think I like the darker pink. I kind of settled on doing the darker pink in the middle. And I mean, it's fun. If you like that, you go ahead and you do it, and that's all good and dandy. It's fun to experiment and to try things out and have a variation. Maybe you do some on purpose. Like, it doesn't all have to be the same, right? Not all roses are the same, and that makes life fun. So we've got these 3 pinks. You can utilize them however you wish. So now to do this bullion rose, we're going to come up. So my pleating thread, you can see I'm like just above where my pleating, you see that pink pleating thread in there? Let me get a little in here. Right, so I'm just above where that pleating thread is. And I am on the top of my pleat. So this comes through. We're taking a very small bite. In my experience, the middle of the rose should be tiny. If it gets bigger, it just doesn't look as polished, at least in my opinion. We're gonna I did like 5 wraps there. Tiny bit. Go through. Adjust the tail. And cinch it down. Something like that. And this just goes, we're not trying to zing or zag, we're just securing that bullion. We're doing that one more time to get the center of our rose, giving it a tiny bit of space. I like to put my needle to the right. Is there a right or wrong way? I don't think so, but that's my personal preference, and that's how I want to show it to you then. And is there a personal preference on, is there a right or wrong way to which direction to wrap? I don't believe so. I've done them both directions. They hold secure and look fine. So whatever your personal preference, whichever way, you know, maybe you can make them look better going counterclockwise than you do clockwise, or vice versa. You know, you do it how it works for you. We go to our other bullion and center down. Now, could you incorporate this darker pink into the petals? You know, we got the center of our rose. Could you incorporate it into the petals that are about to come up? Why not? Absolutely. Am I going to? I am going to not, but you could, absolutely could if you wanted to. I think that would be pretty. I'm going to grab one of the other two pinks. Let's start with the light pink. So I'm going to do these roses a little bit differently than what's shown on the smocking plate, which is fine. I tried out the one that was shown in the smocking plate, and they're pretty, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking bad about them at all. They're just, for me, they're just a little bit big, and maybe it's the way I'm executing them, but they're just a little bit big. I tried them out again over here. I don't know, they're just a little bit big, whereas these ones here, I just like them a little bit better. So you do what works for you, because it's fine. You do you. I like to start my roses in this top left-hand corner. If we could think of like the rose like centered on here, that's the top left-hand corner. And come up and go about 180-ish degrees offset. A word of caution, avoid any of the knots, okay? You don't want your needle to be piercing through a knot, because that's going to be difficult to slide through when you get to doing like sliding through all those wraps. You don't want any, you want to set yourself up for like the best slide through of all the wraps, right? Don't set yourself up for failure. So at this point, here's where we want to lay on all the wraps. Yes, you get to a point where too many is too many, but you'd be surprised with how many wraps they could take. And on the flip side, if your petals are not full of wraps and they've got like a little, I don't know, they're just not plump, it doesn't look as good. So we've got all these wraps. The tension is loose-ish, and we are just going to pull through. This one's not pulling through completely like butter. That's okay. Sometimes that happens. You just work with it. Don't panic. It's all good. It's all good. We get to the place like this. And again, once again, we've got to adjust that tail down. And now that the tail's in the direction of how it's going to pull, you can see we're just going to pull on it ever so gently, and it's going to fall right into place. And I do like to pull in the direction of how I want that like petal. So since the petals go in this direction, I'm going to kind of pull off to the side here. And once we have it looking good, I'm just going to send that needle, send that thread right down. And there we go. Now, on the back side, since we are alternating, I mean, you don't have to alternate colors. Let me give this a turn. Goodness. You don't have to alternate colors, but if you are, here's a little trick that I find helpful. You're just gonna like try to pin your, because you don't want to just, you know, cut the thing and do another knot and have all these knots in behind. So you're wanting to keep this out of the way for the thread that's about to come. So I like just to anchor it down with my needle. A little holding place. So we're going to get the medium pink now. Again, you do whatever colors float your boat. You're just sewing. You can do it. Now we're going to come up. Maybe I'll squeeze in 4 wraps. I don't know. Come up somewhere around here. And then go 180-ish. and avoid piercing through any knots. Right next to it, or pick him up. Yeah. Something like that. Make sure it's loose-ish. Just the tail. Now we can switch colors again. So now we're going to pin this darker pink out of the way and pick up the lighter pink. And you can see how like our wraps are going in like the petals would unfold on a rose. I really like that look. And you know, it's good to flip on the back side, just make sure nothing, you know, what's going on back there? Just make sure no everyone's playing nice and we don't have some weird situation developing. And this one is not pulling. Yes, there is tension in the middle. A little bit. Just work on it. It's fine. See, there it goes. It's all good. Don't commit. Oh, here we go. Sometimes this happens too. You see how that's just a little bit squished, right? Like we have this nice, you know, plump looking pleat, and then the bottom just gets a little bit squished. Just don't overthink it. Take your needle, insert it like into the area, and just give it a little fluff. You know, sometimes we don't need a little fluff. Think about your hair. Sometimes it just does wonders just to give it a little fluff. An idea. Here's the needle. So now we can put our needle down and do the last petal. Because we're getting wild and crazy doing 4 petals. Now that we're done with this color, I'm going to fire off one last thing. So now I'm going to come up somewhere over here. I normally do 3 petals, but you know, we're getting wild and crazy. And I like to come on the inside of that initial petal, that way the one that we're about to create will get tucked in. Like the other ones have been tucked in this whole time. So avoiding knots, it gets harder and harder as you continue. And here we go. You can see how much of a difference that is, like pulling this in the direction you want it. So we're gonna send it way off, like going there. That way it maintains the curvature. Yeah. There we go. A little rose. Isn't that sweet? Let's move on to the little daisy. Alright, so to do the daisy, we've got 5 petals. Yeah, 5 petals. So 2 are going to go on one side, 2 are going to do the other, and then we got 1 down the middle. So this is like the upper left hand, if you will. We're going to come up. We're just going to take a small little bite, like that. Again, coming up pretty close, but we don't actually want to go through that thread pretty close to where we came up. So a small little bite, and we got a lot of wraps. I know, it's gonna work itself out, don't worry. Don't worry. Something like that. Same process as before. The only difference is that our starting and ending points are pretty close together, which forces the bullion, and those routes gotta go somewhere. So that's why how you get that shape to, I'm trying to say, it's like a little circle. How you get it to poop out like that. You see? But there we go. A little petal. Sometimes they get so large that I like to take just a small little stitch over just to like anchor it down. Personal preference. If you want to do so, go ahead and do that. And yeah, send it back down. Just gonna create 4 more, so you have 5.
So if you look at the smocking plate, they've got green in the middle of this flower, this daisy. I've taken it to be like a daisy flower because I'm using yellow. The color here is, it's like a variegated thing. Does she have? Oh yeah. Wait. Glistening pearl. I'm not sure what glistening pearl is. Looks like it's some sort of color variegation. So that's not going to be able to do, unfortunately, and this is fine. But now that I've done yellow, do I want to stick with yellow? Or sorry, do I want to stick with the green on the middle? Or do I want to use a different color? Got my flower here. Maybe the medium pink. So they just show doing this little crisscross thing. There's 1 stitch. And then coming back up. And then there's another stitch. I'm going to repeat that a couple times. Just to fill in the space somewhere. I'm going to change the direction so I've got the other side of the cross. So here's the middle of this. I am going to let it grow on, like just let it marinate and see if it grows on me. So yeah, you could do this method. You could do French knots if you're not a fan of this look. Just let it grow on me. But we've got leaves to do. So grabbing some green. This is going to go by so fast. And it's amazing. We've done all this work with taking our time with the bullions and then just right and all that sort of stuff. And then you introduce some green, lazy daisy leaves, and the whole thing just comes right together. It's crazy. Every time it happens, it's just, my mind is blown. So there are 2 stitches that we need to go over, 2 variations of this lazy daisy stitch that we need to go over. One is to, let's just do a regular lazy daisy just to establish that we know how to do that. So if you look at the smocking plate, it's got 2 lazy daisy on the bottom of the rosebuds. So to do a lazy daisy, you just come up where you want that lazy daisy to end, put your needle pretty close to where that is, and go over however long you want the leaf to be. So that's going to be a pretty short leaf, which I'm good with. And make sure your working thread is above the loop that you just created, okay? So the loop is going to be below the working thread. And you get yourself a little leaf. Yay! To secure the leaf, just go on the other side of that loop. Oops, I just pulled on the other side of my thread. Alright, so to secure that loop, just put your needle on the other side of that loop. And we're done. And it secures right into place. So I'm going to do 1 more. This one's going to be a little bit longer than the first one. Come up, put your needle pretty close to that starting point, and then go over however long you want to go over.
working thread above the loop, and there you go. Secure that down by going on the other side of the loop. Now, a variation of that is going to be, you're going to come up on one side. You're going to come up on one side of the rosebud. And then now you're going to go over on this other side of the rosebud. But again, you're going to have your working thread above the loop. So wherever that bottom of the rosebud is where you want to come up. Leave a little bit of the gap so it doesn't get hidden by the rosebud, the leaf that we're creating. And there you go. You see how that kind of hugs the rosebud now. From here, you could just put your needle down and be done, or you could create a little stem. So we want to create a little stem, we can go down, leaving a little bit of a gap, come back up, kind of switching gears to the stem stitch. You just make that however long you want to make that. I think I'm going to do 2 stitches while I'm crazy. And there you have it. Please. And now that we have these bullions done on the pleats, you need to go check out this video on how to do bullions on a button. It makes for such a sweet little detail. It's like the perfect finish to any heirloom garment. So go check out that video. If you have any questions, of course, put them down in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. And as always, I appreciate y'all for watching and I hope to catch y'all next time.